Greetings, everyone, and we are really glad to have you all on today. My name is Dr. Tim Rice, and I am the lead faculty member for the Doctor of Psychology program here at University of Arizona Global Campus. I'm really excited today to introduce to you a young man who did one of the most creative applied doctoral projects we've had in the time we've done ADPs here at the university. His name's Dr. Chad Church, and I'm really excited for you all to hear about this very interesting study that he did looking at mixed martial arts. And I'm not going to give away all the information, but I would like to introduce you to Dr. Chad Church. Dr. Church, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. The title of my ADP was a motivational athlete profile of a champ in mixed martial arts. I am a recent graduate of UAGC in sport and performance psychology. I am an aspiring professor, owner of a Warrior Mindset Consulting with aspirations of bringing sports psychology professionals and consultants into the world of combat sports, which has long been ignored due to feeling of weakness or trying to admit that you may have a weakness within your game. We'll have a 15-part presentation. We'll start with the introduction. We'll go over the purpose of the study, the importance of the study, the methods used, the potential population that could have participated, the actual population used, the data analysis methods, and then the 5 points that came up during the coding process, which were sport specialization, athletic history, motivation, surrounding people, and the mentality, a 10-point athlete profile, the implications, and finally some conclusions. Study of mixed martial arts is underrepresented and carries a lot of potential benefits in the world of sport and performance psychology. Champs, for those of you who are not familiar, are an individual who holds 2 title belts in the same organization at the same time in 2 different weight classes. The concept of motivation is not new, but it is evolving and it is changing as athletes grow, as sports change, as the needs for performance in all aspects of life change. Elite athletes have shown a higher level of mental and physical toughness than non-elite athletes. This is not something that is new. Once you reach the elite level, you have to have something special within you. Multiple sport discipline athletes are not common. We don't hear too many people talking about the old Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders days. You see a little bit of crossover here and there within sports. Mixed martial arts provides an interesting opportunity to look at someone who has the opportunity to do multiple disciplines, multiple sports, all within the same sport. Understanding this unique motivation can provide assistance in understanding future athletes in the changing landscape of sport specialization. Sport specialization is when someone decides to specialize in a particular sport. Gymnastics, you have to do it at a young age, ice skating at a young age, but there is an opportunity for other sports later on in life. This was a descriptive case study. It was originally meant to explain the mental traits of an athlete who's willing to exit their comfort zone, something that's not exactly common at the elite level. The study gave the perspective of the athlete as well as those who surround them to gain a full impact and a full understanding of what was happening with the athlete throughout their career and how they've grown to reach this elite level. And then the real main reason for the project that I thought of initially was to create a baseline profile that could later be compared to other athletes, both within mixed martial arts, outside, and as well as in other areas of interest, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Green explained that the evolution of a sport such as MMA is fast growing. These athletes are changing, they're evolving. The acceptance of the sport has changed. It was originally described by John McCain as human cockfighting. Now it's on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and you can see it on a daily basis. The inclusion of sports psychology professionals or SPPs in combat sports is not common because, as I mentioned originally, this is a weakness. You have to admit that you may need a little bit of help, a little bit of extra help with preparation or reaching your game to the next level. And then Andrade and his other authors found there's about 79 studies that were proposed with mixed martial arts and motivation as their main focus. Many of these studies were done in Portuguese and Polish. And if you're familiar with mixed martial arts, you know that these are 2 hotbeds for mixed martial artists right now. And so they were never translated into the English language. This was really to add to an additional talking points within mixed martial arts and the psychology aspect of these athletes. I did a qualitative exploratory single-person descriptive case study. Sounds like a lot. It was originally meant to be a comparative case study. However, we only got response from 1 athlete. There are only 7 who've held this title. So it was a shot in the dark to try to get more than 1 person. The recruitment process was through social media and websites. It was a cold call type of situation. messaged the athlete, asked if they were interested in participating. One replied back, and then we started the process. The individuals who surrounded the athlete, I collected their demographic information to understand how long they had known the athlete, how long they had been in their lives, maybe why their perspective was a little bit different than the other people. I did 9 open-ended semi-structured questions that were developed specifically for this research. However, they can be easily adapted to include other combat sports, other types of athletes, and even people outside of the combat sports athlete world. There were 7 potential athletes who could have participated, 6 male, 1 female. A couple of them presented a bit of a language barrier due to their origination from Brazil and Malaysia. And 1 replied back to me, and then each person would bring an undefined number of potential associates. And this works in all aspects. They could be coaches, family member, friends. They could fit into multiple groups, but they bring an unlimited amount of people. It's just who wants to participate. For this one, the former mixed martial arts champ has a heavy background in wrestling, which became an important aspect to understand. They have multiple promotion experience, and then their associates included family, friends, training partners, coach. They range from age 24 to 41 years old, with an average of about 10.8 years of knowing the athlete. I used Yin's method of qualitative content analysis. I compiled the data by doing interviews over Zoom, and then I disassembled the data through a coding process, breaking it down into different parts. And then I reassembled the data to see what common themes were presented throughout the data, and then interpreting the data, which you'll see here in a little bit, and finally drawing conclusions, which were written up. I used Max QDA by Verbi, which allowed me to do the transcription process, the coding process, and the analysis all within a single program, which was great. The 5 common themes that came up, the first one was sport specialization. The athlete understood the need for the right coaches. They were not hung up on having to have the same coach. If they needed to make a change, it was okay in their eyes. They understood wrestling, but they didn't understand the other components when they first started. So they were essentially a wrestler within a cage. And that's how a lot of athletes come into mixed martial arts who haven't started at a young age. They understood the point where they changed and where they started seeing the process slow down for them. They started seeing punches. They started understanding the game a little bit more. And then they understood when they were growing up which sports worked well together. Were they using them as time fillers, or were they actually applicable to what their goals were long term? And then they recognized when they reached the point of burnout. There was a point within their life where they reached a point of burnout. They took a small break, but then they realized that they were super competitive and they need to get back in there. The other participants who were interviewed, they saw how wrestling was a significant factor within this individual's life. Each interview brought up how significant wrestling was within their life. They also saw the natural progression form from the athlete and their development. There was no one person who said that this athlete just came out, was ready to go, and they were ripping and ready. Instead, they had to work for it, and they were willing to put in the work to get to the level. The athletic history of the athlete was very important because while they specialized in wrestling later on in life, football was always their favorite sport. And wrestling was just a secondary focus. But then they started to realize how good they were at it, and they understood they did not have a future in football. So then they started to focus on wrestling, which led them down the mixed martial arts career path, which turned out to be pretty successful for them. Understood the difference on how it felt to win as a team and as an individual. We all know, if you've been in a competitive atmosphere, what it's like to win as an individual and what it's like to win as a team. There's 2 different feelings there, and they appreciated both sides of that. The other participants believe that wrestling set them up for success in their career, not just within mixed martial arts, but also their business life, their family life, and all aspects of their life. Wrestling really truly shaped their mindset, and the athlete brought that up. The other people brought that up. They understood that football was the athlete's favorite sport. They still haven't dropped it. There's a couple inside jokes that came up throughout the interview process that really focused on how important football was to the athlete as they were growing up. Motivation is a significant factor. For the athlete, they're internally motivated. This is not the most common occurrence within a sport where you're out there to make money. They're internally motivated. They always want to move to that next level. They felt like they had always been motivated in all aspects of life, and they felt that the motivation could not be taught to them, but it was something that they had to possess or they had to find themselves. They also accepted that the motivation can be from outside sources. There are coaches, there are family members, there are other aspects of their life that they need to consider as they work their way through their career. And the biggest factor was the athlete mentioned that they didn't want to be normal. They didn't want to be mundane in their life. They didn't want to be looking forward to the weekend or when's the next vacation. They simply did not want to live a typical normal lifestyle. The other participants also saw that the athlete was internally motivated. They were always looking to improve themselves. They were super competitive and constant ability to grow and learn within the sport, within their life, within the business world, within every aspect. And they wanted to evolve as a person and as an athlete. There wasn't just an athlete whose only focus was the sport. They looked at the sport as a job, and then the sport and the hobbies within their lives all work together to achieve the goals of the job. The surrounding people became a very important part of each part of the interview process. The athlete had mentioned that when they were young, their parents kept them accountable. They saw the benefits in both the good and the bad coaches. A lot of people will have a bad coaching experience, and that may cause them to leave the sport or leave their organization. And this athlete saw that even as a bad coach, it provided them with information that they needed to be successful later on. They're able to learn from those around them. They're not afraid to ask questions. They're not afraid to bring in outside help. They're not afraid to make the changes, coaches changes, location changes, anything it needed to make them better on a day-to-day basis. And then the athlete and the other participants all brought up that the athlete was not interested in having yes men around them. They didn't want to be told they were doing great when they were not doing great. They wanted to be told, you need to improve in this aspect. You need to do this instead. You need to push yourself harder here. Then the other participants had mentioned that the athlete has a close circle of people that they trust and they will go to for advice, and who aren't afraid to tell the athlete, no, you need to make a change. And they understood that support can only go so far. In a sport like mixed martial arts, boxing, tennis, anything like that, once you enter your arena, you are on your own. You may have a corner man, you may have someone else there to support you, but ultimately you are on your own, and it is up to you to get the job done. The mentality of the athlete was something that's a little bit different than in most mainstream sports. When asked about notoriety, it was just an additional benefit. They had brought up their history in wrestling, and when you win a match, you get I believe the exact quote was, you get a handshake from your dad and a hug from your mom, and that's it. The athlete also brings an all or nothing approach, and all the other participants had mentioned this as well. They were 100% in or 100% out. There was no half in, half out. They want to be the best. They hate to lose. Even if it's a game of pickleball or a board game at the house, they want to win and they want to be elite all the time. This is very common amongst elite athletes all the way across. And then when it came to ego versus task or specializing in a certain thing or just eventually winning, there was a fine balance. They understood that they needed to improve their skills to win, but at the same point, no matter what, the ultimate goal was to win. The other participants' number one word mentioned was consistent. The athlete is the most consistent person they know when it comes to training, when it comes to improving their skills, when it comes to everything. They saw the athlete's desire to prove that they're the best and improve their skill set all around. As the athlete had mentioned, they were a wrestler within a cage when they first started. However, they evolved into a complete mixed martial artist and eventually reached the status of champion. And then one of the individuals who was also a mixed martial artist mentioned that the skills are only relative to your opponent. So if you are really truly focused on getting better or mastering a skill, that skill level is only going to be relative to the person you're standing across the cage from. After going through all the interview processes and doing the coding, a 10-point athlete profile was developed. As I said, the number one thing that everyone mentioned was consistent. The athlete is consistent in their training, they're consistent in their goals, and they're consistent in everything that they do. They're highly competitive. You're going to find that at the elite level no matter what. They have a desire to be the best, and they're able to vary their training. Mixed martial arts brings an opportunity where you can vary your training across multiple disciplines and still improve within the sport. This is not always the case for more traditional sports, but there is becoming more and more necessary to avoid burnout. It's necessary to surround yourself with the right people. I mean, we all know on a day-to-day basis, if we're surrounded by the right people, we can achieve our goals. Yet this athlete was internally motivated. And while I don't believe this will stay true across the board if other people decide to participate in the future, this particular athlete was very internally motivated to try to be the best that they could be, to just really improve their competitive juices and get them flowing at all times. And they were willing to try new things. As I said, the athlete was a wrestler in a cage. They were willing to try jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and boxing and all these things to really improve their skill set and make them a more well-rounded fighter. While they took the opportunities that were presented to them, they weren't afraid to push for opportunities. If they felt that they deserved something, they were going to step up and they're going to say something. They weren't willing to sit back and let other people take opportunities that they believe they deserved. And they're always constantly evolving their goals. Even to this day, their goals are changing, both in business world and the mixed martial arts world and everything. Their goals are always changing and evolving. And then their life becomes part of their training. A lot of their hobbies revolves around improving conditioning, improving their skills, just creating a better mental environment for themselves. SPPs can really use this study as an additional resource in mixed martial arts. There's not a lot of studies out there. And as I've said, the SPPs are really something that's new to the game of mixed martial arts. And they have to realize they have to tailor their services to each and every fighter, maybe even depending on where they're at in their career. If they're a beginner and they only have 2 or 3 fights, then working on the mental skills training aspects and working on improving their preparation is going to be key, as opposed to those who are later in their career who may just be looking to keep the focus while they continue through their training development. And then additional studies will benefit this as more and more info comes from other champs and those who have pursued it, and even other areas of interest. It's really going to add to the study and it's going to improve it. Mixed martial arts organizations can use this to understand their athletes. A lot of these athletes come in, they don't, they have a skill set, but you don't really know where they're at mentally. You don't know where they're at physically. You can really evaluate the complete athlete as just opposed to, are they going to go out there and knock someone out? Are they going to submit somebody? Are they going to go for a decision? And then knowing who and when to push the athlete. You have to know if they're ready. If the athlete is ready to be pushed and they're willing to go to that next step of being a champ, then it's necessary to understand where they are at mentally. The ultimate bottom line is increased revenue. Capitalize on this phenomenon. Champ is a phenomenon right now. It may not last. It may not be around for a long time, but right now it is the pinnacle. It is the elite. It is the top of the game. So you have to understand this, capitalize on it, and hopefully it'll increase your revenue by gaining more and more acceptance. Other mixed martial arts participants can mimic the strategies of this fighter. They can really look at how this fighter went through their career, when did they change, or what aspects did they bring in, and they can see what's going to work for them. They can apply it to their own development. They can potentially bring in SPPs. They may realize they need to make a change and that they were afraid to make before, but they saw that this fighter was willing to make a change. And then they need to see the benefits of motivational characteristics. When you understand what motivates you, you'll understand what's going to drive you to go to practice. These guys step into a cage day to day and they get punched in the face. If I said, hey, you want to step into a cage and get punched in the face tomorrow, you're probably not going to want to do it. But these guys do it on a day-to-day basis. This project really sets it up for a lot of future research. The ideal start would be to compare with other champs, the other 6 individuals who have reached this elite status in Bellator, UFC, and ONE FC, and understand how they either relate to this fighter or how they are different from the fighter. And then maybe compare to those who are wanting to be. There's individuals out there who this is their goal right now, or there's some individuals who've tried and they've failed. How did this affect their mentality in defending their original championship? Was it difficult for them to bounce back from a loss, even though they're still a champion? And then outside of mixed martial arts, this study provides an opportunity to compare with other sports, and especially with other athletes who have reached a pinnacle within their career. You look at athletes like Michael Phelps or anybody in any traditional sport who've reached a pinnacle, and you want to understand why did they reach that pinnacle and what was different about them that was not the same as the other athletes in the sport. And then you can compare to other areas of interest. One thing was brought up was applying this study to CEOs, understanding how Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Bezos all look at themselves. Do they have the same mental traits as these fighters? Some of the things that I learned from the study are fighters are a rare breed. These guys are a little different. Men and women step into a cage and have someone trying to rip their arms off and choke them out and punch them in the face, and they love it. And then the sport of MMA is evolving and growing as its potential participation of SPPs. SPPs have the opportunity to bring in this mental aspect of the training for these individuals and take it to the next level. The understanding of any elite athlete who has reached a unique feat can benefit across the board. If I understand how this fighter reached this feat, I may understand why Michael Phelps has 20 plus medals at the Olympics. The lack of athletes studying in general for mixed martial arts leaves a significant opportunity for more to be done. This is a sport that has been widely ignored, maybe based on the reputation it had early on. Now it's super popular. It's on ESPN. It's on all these networks. So it's getting more and more of an understanding and more of an acceptance across the line. This study was meant to act as a baseline. This is simply one athlete. This is how one athlete views themselves and how the people around them view them. If you can compare it to the other athletes, it's going to open up conversations. In 2012, the study was done that found that physical fitness and mastery of skills were the predominant motivational factor for the athletes. However, at that time, mixed martial arts had not reached its pinnacle, had not reached this level of popularity it is today, so they were not included. So as the introduction of money, the introduction of sponsorships, the introduction of all this other notoriety has come in, these athletes have the ability to grow and develop and provide a unique understanding that wasn't there before. And then this further supports and adds to the self-determination theory and the achievement goal theories that have been around for many years. We can look at these athletes and understand why are they changing? Why is the sport able to grow and evolve and change at such a rapid pace that wasn't possible before? It's something that has been long ignored and is long overdue for SPPs and other individuals to look at and understand the sport and the athletes behind this unique opportunity. I'm open for questions. As you can see, my email's right here. If anybody doesn't get to your question or I miss anything, please feel free to reach out, email.
Thank you so much, Dr. Church. We do have some questions from some of our attendees. I'm going to go to a question earlier from Dr. Peggy Sundstrom. And she states, I wonder if you considered a narrative design rather than a case study.
I did. However, you have to understand how the media may be looking, how the athlete may be looking to promote a fight, or how the athlete may be looking at reaching a higher notoriety status. So they may be playing a character as opposed to playing themselves, and then gathering the information from the people around them really gave a complete 360-degree understanding of the athlete.
Okay. Next question is from Dr. Kelly Olson Stewart. She asked or states, this is fascinating. Seems like it would be ideal to showcase in a practitioner type journal or super engaging presentation. What's next for you?
As I said, my main goal is I would love to be the guy who brings SPPs and consultants into the mixed martial arts world. There's a few fighters who are starting to use them. There's the Performance Institute that's in Las Vegas, the UFC has, and then there's one in Shanghai, China that they use, and they're trying to bring a complete understanding of the athlete and a complete availability of their resources. And this is something that I really believe is ignored in the sport because it is such a testosterone fueled and based sport. Even the females are looked at as savages or whatever your opinion may be of the sport, and bringing in people like us who can work through their mental aspects and maybe have them admit a weakness, and there's a very famous fighter out there who says the hardest thing they have to do is get started. So they go into the ring, they go in the cage, and they feel like they're sleeping almost until, 1 or 2 rounds into the fight. And usually if they're not finishing those 1 or 2 rounds, then they win. But if they're not awake and they're not ready to go and they're not prepared, then they're missing something within their game. And this person has, 50 plus fights. So they've known this weakness for a long time, and they're just finally now addressing it really late into their career.
Thank you. Question from Dr. Louise Sweeney Cox. Very interesting study. Thanks for opening my eyes today regarding MMA athletes. And also received a comment from Dr. Sundstrom stating that she likes the 360-degree perspective. So just wanted to share that with you. I have a question for you, and it's a question for everyone that would be in the audience today and listening to your presentation. Why MMA for Dr. Chad Church?
I'm a junkie. I won't even try to sugarcoat this. I'm a mixed martial arts junkie. Jiu-jitsu. If it's on TV and they're trying to punch each other or they're trying to rip each other's limbs off, I'm watching. I might have 2-3 screens going at a time. A lot of people are like that with football and basketball and even golf. And mixed martial arts just kind of became my obsession, my thing, probably 10 10, 12 years ago, I walked into a gym. It was a mixed martial arts gym. I didn't do mixed martial arts, but being around those guys really truly motivated me to want to go to the gym because it was fun to watch these guys. It was fun to see what they were doing, see how they're evolving, and see how they're changing as athletes. And, I just happened to be the guy in the gym training with the same strength and conditioning guy the athletes were training with, and I thought it was cool. And then I started watching every fight, and now my wife gets dragged into it and everybody else gets dragged into it around me because it just has become an obsession.
Okay. Looks like we have a raised hand. Daryl, can you comment in the chat, please? We have two people with raised hands. If you've raised your hand, please comment in the chat, please. Okay, we'll wait for that, but I do have another question before that, before we receive that in the chat. One of the questions I have is, when you think about, well, take it back for those people that are listening that may be students out there or will listen to this who are going through the challenge of completing a doctoral project. What led to you wanting really to do this, and what were the challenges of doing this?
I was actually on my way to the second in residence, and you were my in residence person, and we had to develop an idea for a project. And I was on a plane and I was like, what can I do that is going to not make me go crazy for the next 2 to 3 years of my life? Like, what do I want to do that's going to hold my interest? And as I said, mixed martial arts and combat sports were an obsession of mine. So I was like, if I can apply this, then it will continue to hold my interest because it's held my interest for so long. And really the biggest challenge was understanding what I was going to be able to do as opposed to what I wanted to do. A lot of people will come into this journey and be like, I want to change the world. I want to reinvent the wheel. And the thing is you're in school and you're paying to be there, and you're developing yourself and you're trying to improve yourself. And really the main goal is to graduate and then go change the world. And now that I've graduated, like I said, I want to be the guy who hopefully brings SPPs and consultants into this world and changes the way that fighters look at the mental aspect of their careers.
Okay, a question did pop up from Daryl King, and it's a question that he has. I have a question. How can I apply this to my academic career? And that's a pretty much, yeah, go ahead and answer that, Chad, if you don't mind.
Well, it's really find out what motivates you. What do you want to do? What is your long-term goals? What's your short-term goals? This person's short-term goals were to compete. So they played football, baseball, and wrestled. And wrestling eventually led to a college career. And then they got burned out. And then they realized, well, I'm very competitive. I want to compete and I want to make sure I can continue to do this. So then they move to the next level. You have to look at it the same way. Are you willing to put in the amount of work and go in and day out and tell your family and tell your friends, no, I can't do something, or I don't have time to do that, I have to go read academic journals? And if so, what's your motivation to get you to the end? Eventually it may change, it may evolve, and you may have constantly evolving goals. I'm going to pass this class. I'm going to pass this class. Okay, now I want to go and work towards my degree. Oh, I just got my master's. I want to work towards a doctorate. You got to see what are your goals. I know many people who they don't belong in school. They don't belong in anything past a bachelor's or anything past a master's, and they understand that and they're happy with that. And that's what has really motivated them to get to whatever level they want to get to. So just find your motivation and find where you want to be.
Yeah. And Dr. Sundstrom brought this up, and I think it's a great point. Of course, she said she's a former karate and jiu-jitsu practitioner. She understands the interest in martial arts, but just not the MMA part of it. But she stated, discipline is what your study and your academic achievement have in common. And that's extremely true. So Daryl, hopefully got that, I can say as Dr. Church's chair that, he was one of the best I've ever had, and he continued to push through. And as you can see, he did a really good job on the presentation. Any other questions at all? All righty. Dr. Church, anything to add before you close?
No, thank you everyone for viewing the presentation. And like I said, if anybody has any questions or you're looking for any help or whatever, just reach out to me, warriormindsetconsulting@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thanks everyone for being here today and for taking part in this presentation. I hope you get a chance to take part in all the other presentations. They're all good. We look forward to seeing you in the next session.